Good morning. So this week's quota is Simon Peites and Peites. The syllabus says Tzaddik as well. We're not doing Tzaddik. Tzaddik, as I mentioned, is the laws of Chal. Chal is the laws of the udder, kosherizing the udder. Based on what we learned last week, that at least rabbinically speaking, the milk that is found in a cow that dies is still considered milk, even though you could make the case that it's considered meat, considering that it's still inside the animal at the moment of death. But nonetheless, it's considered meat rabbinically, and there's a whole process of extracting that milk from the udder should you want to eat the udder. I've never been to any restaurant where they serve udder. I'm happy to try finding fancy food, finding strange foods, but never had udder. At any rate, so it's a complicated sugya and it's not very much relevant, so we're not going to be learning that. Okay, so this week we're learning Peches and Peites 88 and 89. They're not super complicated, deep sugyas. They're fundamental and very practical. So Peches begins with the law, or it's very short siman, two sifim, just two paragraphs in Peches. And essentially, it's the law of being careful at the table, not to have meat and milk at the same time, lest one God forbid, to eating them together. That's essentially what it comes down to. Now, what's interesting is that this is a unique obligation with regard to milk and meat specifically. We've already had this concept a few times that because milk and meat are inherently permitted in and of themselves, and it's only in their combination that they become prohibited, that sometimes leads to leniencies and sometimes to stringencies. So when we first were introduced to that idea, it was
It's similar to the laws of Nida, of our
yes,
the
indeed,
Hakaka is like with your wife versus another woman, and so it's similar in that way.
exactly correct. And many of the laws are makbil, are what's the word? Equal, the same. And some of the commentaries get into when yes, when they are similar, when they're not similar. But yes, correct. Because milk and meat are inherently permitted on their own, it's only in their combination to become forbidden. So we had, for example, chanam, right? That was a stringency, that the whole mixture becomes a prohibition. We also had just in the last sermon that the biblical minimum of prohibition, which was a kazayas, is in the combination of a half a kazayas of milk and a half a kazayas of meat, not in a kazayas of each. In this case, it leads to a certain stringency, meaning because milk and meat are inherently each independently kosher, so there's nothing that tells me, oh, don't touch that in and of itself. I'm comfortable eating it, which is why I have to make sure there's a separation between my milk and meat, and there shouldn't be anything present. In other words, if you think of it practically, if your wife is serving you a fleishik dinner, you don't check every food to make sure that it's a fleishik, that it's a meat dinner. You assume it's all meat. You just eat. And if there happens to be left behind, God forbid, uh, some bread that was eaten with cheese earlier, it's not unlikely that you won't eat it. Because why would you assume otherwise? Right? Whereas if there was a non-kosher meat that you knew was non-kosher, you're not touching it by accident. You're not going to eat it by accident.
Or seafood. Let's say
Or
like
yeah, or you saw
seafood's a lot more obvious. Except not kosher make it look similar.
right. So if there's food that you know is non-kosher, you're not going to accidentally eat it. When it comes to milk and meat, because you're comfortable eating it always anyway, so there's the greater fear that you might end up eating the mixture. Aaron's making the point that this is similar to, and this is indeed correct, similar to the laws of nida. When one's wife is during the period when they cannot be together, then there are what's called harchakas. There's separations, barriers that have to be made between husband and wife, lest they come to cross a line that they shouldn't. And part of that is when they're eating to make certain separations. Now that doesn't have to be done with some other man's wife, even though that is, I don't know, worse or less worse, but there's a serious prohibition in being with someone else's wife. And the reason for that is because she's not my wife. There's not a familiarity and comfortability there. So I don't have to put up a greater barrier. With my own wife, there's much more comfortability, as there ought to be. Therefore, when we're not supposed to be together, we have to put a barrier. The same thing is true of the milk and meat. Because they're inherently permitted, Therefore, barriers have to be made to make sure that we're not going to be eating them together. So there's going to be laws regarding, in general, not having them in the same table. And because of that, it's only when we're eating, but for example, the counter or in the fridge, there's no problem with having milk and meat together. And then there are going to be questions of who are the people eating with each other? Are they familiar with each other? Would they easily pick food off the other person's plate if two people are eating with each other, one milk, one meat? And what constitutes a visual reminder that we shouldn't be touching each other's plates and eating off each other's plates because I'm eating milk and you're eating meat. Okay, that's the overview of Peches. Not very difficult, not very complicated. There's one little issue about like brothers who would not want to pick from each other's plate. Is that considered enough for separation, or does their brotherhood override the fact that they wouldn't want to touch each other's plate? There's a little discussion around that in some of the commentaries. Exactly what constitutes, okay, this person, I'm not going to pick off his plate. We can read some of that as well. And what constitutes a division, like if you put a vase down with flowers in the middle between us to remind us that I'm eating milk, you're eating meat, don't mix. So what if I put a bread basket? What if I put a can of water, a bottle of water? These things are going to come up as well. That is the overview of Peches. Now comes Peites, which is going to be the more.
Does that also deal with somebody puts down a mat or something
Yeah,
like that?
separate mats. Yeah,
Separate mat?
separate placemats would work. Yeah,
Placemat, right?
yeah.
Sorry?
Sorry,
Two separate types of
two
table.
placemats. Yes, would two placemats would be a valid thing as we're going to learn. Okay, so that is. Hey, yes, did I miss anything here?
We're also working with two separate color plates. I mean, like you have a blue plate and red plate, and like some similar.
Yeah, some visual that indicates that you're not eating together. Yeah, but there's also going to be a discussion. It's not directly actually in the text, but we'll come up with it, which is if you're not eating meat right now, but you're within the time frame of waiting, you're in the 6 hours after your meat.
Mhm.
Are you allowed to sit with someone who's eating milk or eating dairy? And you know the person is familiar enough with you to want to share with you something to taste. And maybe you need the reminders there. Maybe you need the reminders there as well, lest you end up eating that. Or is that a stringency? That's going to come up as well, which is going to link to the next chapter, which is a test.
So that familiarity doesn't require you to eat. Familiar with somebody and they're eating. You sit at the table?
That's the question.
Right.
Dispute.
Right.
It's dispute whether the fact that I'm not eating meat right now means okay, it's only a stringency to wait 6 hours as we'll learn, so maybe it's not a big deal. Or no, you gotta be careful because you're so comfortable with this guy, you're just gonna pick off his plate, and God forbid you'll eat cheese when you're in the wait time. Sorry?
I feel like hunger tastes. They also could factor into this. Like if you're super stuffed here and you're sitting down there, you're not gonna, like you. I feel like, but if you're hungry, you might forget.
6 hours is a long time.
No, I'm saying it could be 5 hours later and you're hungry. Like,
You are hungry.
There's gonna be other tangential things like if you're sitting across a big table like this, is that enough? If we're our enemies, is that enough? Literally.
Sitting with your enemy. Right?
Yeah,
You're not
sitting
gonna take
across
off his plate.
Yeah, I don't know. Things like that. If you're in a communal place, like you're in like it's a hotel lobby, and you can order from either that side, which is dairy, and that side, which is meat, and who you're sitting next to, these things are all going to come up in the discussions. Okay, now comes Peites, which is the big sugya. What happens to Peites? And that deals with the question of how long to wait between milk and meat, and between meat and milk. So we already know, because we're living as Orthodox Jews, we already know what we do, which is we always wait 6 hours after any kind of meat, including chicken, even that which is only rabbinic, as we learned already in Pei Zion. Chicken and meat, milk is only rabbinic, but we still wait the full 6 hours, and we wait 1 hour after any kind of milk and cheese, an hour. That's what we all do. But we have to go like back to the beginning and reverse engineer and say, okay, where did this come from? And why are we doing it this way? And are there leniencies, other views that are more lenient in the way we practice? And which leniencies under extenuating circumstances would we rely on more than others? Because which one are greater stringencies and therefore greater reason to be lenient, and so on. That's what we're going to have to be discussing now, and there's going to be practical relevance. Like, for example, Shavuos, when you're going from milk to meat, that's going to tangentially be brought up as well. So, what are the underpinning thinkings here? So, we have a few different sources in the Gemara that converge that discuss this question of waiting between the separation between milk and meat when you're eating them consecutively one after the other. Some of the sources talk about chicken, some talk about actual beef, some talk about meat, cheese, and they seem, at least on the surface level, to be sometimes contradictory. And the way you resolve these contradictions, qualifying which text is speaking about which scenario, informs you how you are to behave practically. So I'm going to only share one of these Gemaras, maybe two, but we'll stick with one just because that's the most important one. And understanding that Gemara is going to inform us the different opinions you're going to see in the Shulchan Aruch, because you're going to see multiple opinions, right? You're going to see the Shulchan Aruch, so you're going to lay down an opinion. The Ramah is going to introduce another opinion that's way lenient, then give a compromise, and then say go back to the then go back to the Shulchan Aruch's stringent view. So there's going to be multiple different views that are coming up, and especially when we learn the commentaries on the side, which we have to be in this case, because in this case, the way we practice goes beyond the Shulchan Aruch, and the Ramah goes farther. So we have to learn some of the things on the side. We're going to see multiple different layers of opinions. So what does it come down to? This Gemara then question that I'm sharing with you says that milk and meat should be separated by a meal or at a separate meal. Now, what exactly does that mean, a separate meal? So let's go. We'll do three opinions here, and we'll do the most lenient to the most strict, let's say. The most lenient opinion says that when the Gemara says to wait from one meal to another between milk and meat, it's only if you didn't wash your hands and rinse out your mouth. But if you washed your hands and rinsed out your mouth, gesundheit, eat the opposite one right after. That would be a massive leniency. Imagine how what our kitchen in Yiddish would look like.
In my Nutrimall.
Going which way? Cheese to milk or milk to cheese?
Cheese to
meat. Okay, so we'll get to that in a second. We'll wait till that in a second. For now, we'll talk about meat to cheese. We'll get to cheese. Let's do the other way around. We'll do the other way around in a minute. So meat to cheese or meat to milk and full hard beef. So the most lenient of opinion, which comes from the Rabbeinu Tam, says that when the Gemara says that you have to wait a meal between after meat before you get to cheese, it's only if you didn't wash your hands and rinse your mouth out. But if you did, it could even be the same meal, which would mean you'd eat a burger, wash your hands, rinse your mouth out, brush your teeth. I don't know, rinse out, and then drink a coffee with milk, or have a cheese blends for dessert, cheesecake for dessert. You wouldn't even have to bench, which is like to our sensibilities is mind blowing. But this is an opinion that exists, and then I was going to mention that opinion.
If that was how we hold, I feel like it would lean so much into eating them together.
So there's good reason why we're stringent. Is your point? Yes. Okay. In other words, let's put it this way: we just finished learning you shouldn't bring them up on the same table.
Yeah.
Imagine that was the common practice.
Same
How often they would end up on the same table and mixed together. It would be, but in theory, this view is very linked in that regard, which means you have to clear off the table. You have to clear it off of leftover bread also, which may have touched meat.
Right.
You have to clear it off of everything, as we're going to learn. You have to clear it off before you bring the next thing.
Wash your hands, rinse your mouth.
Wash your hands, rinse your mouth, and then enjoy your cheese blends for dessert. If you went to those like fancy posh places where you have like you go into the salon for dessert and a coffee, it could be completely milchik, even though the meal was fleishik completely because you washed your hands in the middle, right? Okay, that's the most lenient view. The next view up says, okay, next meal means literally next meal, which means you have to wash, you have to bench, wash your hands, rinse your mouth out, so you don't have any actual pieces of meat left behind, and then make a new meal. And then make a new meal. That would be the next level up, which also could be in a time frame just as lenient as the previous opinion.
It's a difference of 2 minutes.
But it's a question of not so much time, but of activity, benching in between. So that was a separate meal. That's what the Gemara said, that's a separate meal. Okay. The final view, which is the majority view and the way we rule is that when the Gemara says another meal, it means the time between one meal and the next meal, between your breakfast and your lunch. Or actually, in the old day, it wasn't even breakfast and lunch. It's more like brunch and lupper. That was more like it. Today we have like 3 meals, but they used to have like 2 meals. One pas shachris, pas arvis, right? Which meant it was like a late breakfast and an early dinner before it got dark, which is 6 hours. Those are the 3 views.
That's what 6 hours comes to.
Yes, correct. Because when it says to wait a meal between, it doesn't mean next meal. It means wait a full meal time, which is going to be 6 hours. That's where it came from. Okay, what's missing from this whole thing? There's a view that people practice that's missing. The 1 hour.
Or the 3 hours.
1 hour, sorry?
Well, 3 hours is German.
1 hour
from
What's German? What's 3 hours?
3
3
hours
hours
is
is
German.
German.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's like it. Okay, I'd be interested to see where that comes from. I'm sure it'll come up in the commentaries here, but I haven't seen that yet in my preparation. So
The Yekers.
No, I'm hearing that.
They're the only ones who are allowed, but you have to actually prove. Like, David and Ricky Merovitz?
Yeah.
So they hold by 3 hours. And I remember when he told me that, he's like, I'm a Yeker, and I could trace it back to the part of Germany that was the minhag.
Go tell Hackenbrough.
It's very interesting.
Mayor Hackenbrough is father's from Germany. Anyway, okay, interesting. I'm sure it'll come up in the commentaries. I haven't seen that in my preparation just yet, but that's interesting to know. Okay, so that's what we're talking about still now, between meat and milk. So now we have the 3 different views. We understand where they come from and what the thinking behind it is. In terms of waiting, why the Gemara would tell us to wait from one meal to the next, meaning wait 6 hours, there are different ways to approach it. And these different ways of approaching it have actual practical application. Rambam, for example, says, because we assume that there's going to be some meat stuck in your teeth. Yeah. So now 6 hours later, okay, the other view, like Rashi says, is because, where's my Rashi here?
But once it's in your mouth, isn't it automatically nullified?
Well, not necessarily.
You're not cooking it, you're not mixing it. It just happens to be that it's a residue. So
And then you're eating it together with your cheese that comes next.
I know, but it's not actually mixing. It's like
Together.
it's like the dust. It's like considered like the dust. Like it's not a sincere enough amount.
Is it considered dust?
Sorry?
At what point is this considered dust?
Well, if you have one little strand of meat, let's say, that's stuck in your teeth, as we're using as an example, and then 4 hours later, 6 hours later, you have a piece of cheese. Well, why is the piece nullified after the 6 hours?
So that's exactly the point. Rambam writes, because the Rambam is of the opinion that the waiting that 6 hours is because of the meat in your teeth, therefore, it would imply that after 6 hours, that strand of meat is considered nullified and meaningless.
Right.
And in theory, even if that meat was there 6 hours later, would it be a problem?
Correct.
Rashi, conversely, says that because meat is fatty, its flavor retains for that long, which is a total truth. If you have a proper good steak in the evening and you don't have a very long sleep at night, you can wake up in the morning and still feel a taste in your mouth. 6 hours. It's not, which means therefore, if you have a little piece of meat stuck in your teeth, you may, in theory, have to wait again 6 hours because you still have meat there. Because Rashi never indicated that after 6 hours the meat stuck in your teeth is meaningless, as Rambam would have indicated.
But isn't this all a chumrah though? Like, as opposed to, it's not really deraisa, right? It's like this concept of having meat and milk.
Is it deraisa or not? That's a good question. Probably not, but it's not bishul.
Right.
So it's rabbinic. It's a rabbinic prohibition of eating them together, even when it's not cooked. Yeah, let's say. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Right? So there's a practical application that might come from these two different opinions. And the end is we take the stringencies of both. Although when it comes to, we're going to get to it when we get to our Chazar Lamaisa. Interesting point, but nonetheless, it's a good point.
What was the question? I didn't hear. Sorry.
We usually have the principle that two stringencies equal leniency.
Good
point. But we're going to learn that when it comes to the teeth, we'll get to that by Chazar Lamaisa. But when it comes to the meat stuck in teeth, we're not necessarily going to tell you to wait 6 hours. You wake up in the morning and there's just a little piece of meat from your steak last night.
It's also gross.
Brush your teeth and have your coffee with milk, as we're going to learn.
I know you brushed your teeth before you went to bed. So that meat is kind of disgusting because it's been mixed.
And for sure.
With something, It's been mixed with the toothpaste and everything. You wouldn't eat it even if it was sitting there.
Okay, I'm not so sure toothpaste counts as nice from Town of Gum.
Oh, really? Really?
Right? For example, on Pesach, you'd have to have kosher Pesach toothpaste because it's designed to be able to even consume a little.
Yeah,
Like you swallow a little bit. So I'm not so sure sifting is dish soap, but maybe. But either way, we're going to see leniencies in terms of the teeth business.
I thought because of the foul taste of the toothpaste, you don't have to have a hechsher altogether.
But it's not foul.
For Pesach?
No, for b'chlal. You don't have a.
Yeah, you don't need a
Use
hechsher.
No.
Crest toothpaste.
That's because that's
And you
because
don't have a hechsher.
right.
Doesn't have a hechsher.
But Pesach,
No, it's because it's interesting. It's
Oh, Pesach
it's
is
no
a
longer
different.
shemachil.
Pesach is a.
Yeah.
Pesach, we're worried
No
about
chametz.
chametz.
Yeah,
It's a
it's not
different thing.
chametz.
We're talking about kashrus. Now we're talking about tam. What's the taste of it? So
right.
if the taste is
That's the
ruined,
bittul.
then doesn't you
It's
know?
more, I think it's more because of bittul. Right, because tam ke'ikr, once the flavor has disappeared, the flavor it's gone. Right, it's not the actual mamash. It's not like you got pieces of non-kosher in there. It's maybe a flavor of non-kosher.
Why does it?
It's a good question. Maybe that's a good question, but I think that's the
Doesn't
answer.
need a hechsher, right?
Yeah.
Toothpaste doesn't need a hechsher.
Right.
Everything else needs a hechsher.
Everything else,
Everything else, whatever you put in your mouth needs a hechsher, but toothpaste doesn't need a hechsher.
Who says toothpaste doesn't need a hefsher?
That you wouldn't want to eat, and therefore
Right.
you're going to.
No, you're right.
You're going to spit it out, and therefore because of the taste.
So does that consider? Okay, good point. So you're supporting Noah's argument that once you brush your teeth, that it ruins the flavor. Okay, fair enough.
Right.
So
I just want to comment on that. Who says you don't need a
One
hefsher for toothpaste? You need a hefsher for dish soap. Touches your dishes. Why wouldn't you need a hefsher for your toothpaste, which goes in your mouth?
Some don't. Many do not have hechsher on their teeth on their dish soap, and those who have hechsher on their dish soap also have hechsher on their toothpaste.
Okay.
No, I'm serious. But it's not necessarily across the board that everybody does that. I it's chatoy and masker in my house. I don't have soap with hechsher on it. We get the one that's cheap.
It's probably kosher anyways, even though you don't.
I don't know, but it's not necessarily with hechsher. Sorry.
I was going to say then you would have an issue with children's toothpaste because that's
It's
designed to taste good. So they will brush their teeth. That was like in the
They'll even swallow it.
And they could swallow it.
They do swallow.
And they do swallow it.
There is a hefsher on most of these things.
Bubble gum. Okay, good point.
So I'm saying that's where I could see the whole concept is for children's toothpaste.
We're gonna have to we'll keep that in mind for our Chazar Lamaisa. Think about all that. Okay. So that's with respect to meat and cheese that follows. These three different opinions, and as you already know, we follow the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch rules with this opinion that we wait 6 hours, and even when you go back to the original dispute in the times of the Rishonim, this is the majority view. The majority view of the understanding of the Gemara, considering, as I mentioned before, because there are other Gemaras that seem to contradict, and the common understanding how to solve all of this is to understand that when the Gemara says to wait a meal between one and the other, is to wait the time frame of a meal that is a full 6 hours, and that becomes the halacha as per the majority rule. And the question becomes the other way around. First, okay, you have other things. First of all, you have chicken. Cheese following chicken, where there the Gemara actually is very lenient. The Gemara uses the term you can eat cheese after chicken behefker freely, without anything, without washing, without benching, without washing your hands or mouth. Gemara is very, very lenient, but nonetheless, we are, as we already know, we are stringent, and the reason for that is the way Tosfos frames it is because there actually is a view, even though we reject this view, but there is a view that chicken is biblically prohibited as well. Even though we reject that view and we take it that it's rabbinic, but nonetheless, there is a view which says that chicken is biblically prohibited. That's number one. And number two, the Beis Yosef learns in Rambam that the way Rambam learns the Gemara, not getting into all that, is that when the Gemara says to wait a mealtime between meat and cheese, it actually includes chicken as well. So in Rambam's view, even if you take the rabbinic, even if you accept that chicken and milk is rabbinic, you would still have to wait 6 hours. And thus, notwithstanding the Gemara seeming leniency with regard to chicken and milk, at least in the basic reading of the Gemara, we are stringent when it comes to chicken and then milk following. So it ends up being the full 6 hours anyway. But it's still important to know that the leniency exists. Because in theory, in certain situations, maybe a person could be lenient after the fact or whatever. Okay. Now comes the other way around. Cheese going to beef and cheese going to chicken. So the Gemara actually here is lenient. After cheese, go straight to meat. All you need to do is switch meal. Putting aside that opinion which said you don't have to switch meal, you only have to wash your hands out between meat and chicken, meat and cheese. Putting that view aside, everybody else is of the view that if you eat cheese, dairy, and then you go to meat, all you have to do is wash your hands, rinse your mouth, and make a new meal, which means bench in between, which is important when it comes to Shavuos. And this is indeed common practice in many Sephardic communities where they just wash their mouth out after pizza, wash their hands, and bench, and then they'll go straight to a hamburger. Yeah, even in the Hasidic community, interesting.
Communities, I've seen. They'll have dairy, then they'll get rid of everything,
and they go straight to meat without waiting.
It's like a 15-minute kind of buffer because they need to they clean up, get everything ready.
So the buffer, I imagine, is because of what you were saying earlier, that if we just allowed it to be so quick, it would end up being mixing.
Yeah.
But in theory, if you're taking this view, you don't need to do it all.
No, so technically they rinse their mouth, wash their hands, and they're good.
No, you have to do different Birkat Hamazon.
Yeah.
A bench.
No, the bench.
Right. Because it says other meal, it has to be another meal, right?
They don't want to leave anything out just in case they might mix up. So they clean everything.
Okay, so that goes to what I said earlier in Peches, which is you can't have milk, you can't eat milk and you can't have milk and meat on the same table while you're eating one or the other. That's not a question of time frame waiting, which is Peches subject.
Right.
That's a question of Peches,
practically,
where you have to practically
exactly.
follow the rules of Peches, which is to clean your table, not to have cheese on the table while you're eating meat. That would Peches.
Practically, there's a 15-minute buffer because they clean everything up. The woman goes there.
But let's use our example of where you were having a cheese dinner, and then you went into the next room where they served you
You're right.
Beef sliders. No problem, as long as you benched in between.
Isn't that the tshuva of Rav Hendel though? Alav Shalom.
He mentioned it last week. He mentioned it last week, and I forgot to look it up. I actually have Rav Hendel's book of halacha.
No, because I remember like my
Naftali
Naftali told me that, for example, when it comes to like sharp cheeses, Rav Hendel paskins that there's no such thing as sharp cheeses today. You can go from cheddar to, I'm talking about the processed cheese that they make, like the Mahadran cheddar cheese. It's not real cheddar because it's not really aged.
Let's get to hard cheese in a second.
Fine.
But actually, I thought you were talking about the reverse, and I forgot that I have at home Rabbi Hendel's grandson, who's a teacher here in Yeshiva, gave me a copy of Rabbi Hendel's book.
Amazing.
His grandchildren published a book of his. So I'm going to look it up. I forgot. I want to look it up. I'm going to look it up.
But he's not so machmir about this. That's actually the point, Pesach.
We'll look it up. Nicely saved, right? That's the expression. We'll bring a book and we'll find out. We'll look it up, God willing, and we'll have our answer at Chazar.
I don't think he brings the minhag in Shavuos. Does he bring the minhag to wait? I don't think he brings.
No,
that's right.
That's right, because the Ramah here rules also that way. The Ramah also rules that way.
Yeah.
Right. The Ramah here is going to rule that you just have to rinse your mouth out and wash your hands, and then that's it. That's all you have to do after cheese. He's not going to change. He's not going to argue with the Shulchan Aruch here.
Yeah.
It's actually not quite clear. Okay, so let's get to the Ramah in a second. The Ramah writes. Okay, you know what? Since you have the books in front of you.
Yeah.
Okay, the Ramah writes like this. If you go to the Haggah and Sibbeis. Yeah. And then we'll address hard cheese with that. And this is going to introduce a third view. Okay.
35.
We'll look at the Hebrew because I'm not sure how that translated in English, but I want to show you how the Hebrew can be translated in more than one way.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to give you one translation and then a second translation. V'yesh machmirin, and there are those that are stringent. Afilu b'basar achar gvina, even when it comes to meat after cheese. Doesn't say how long you're waiting, but just says we are stringent. Stringent to do what? Doesn't say. But and this is our custom. Shekol hagvina kasha. Anytime the cheese is hard cheese, so it's longer digestion, it's going to be stuck in your teeth more, whatever the reasons are. We don't eat even chicken after it, just like we wouldn't eat cheese after meat, which means whatever you do with meat after cheese, whether 6 hours or wash your hands, same thing is going to be in the reverse if you are eating meat or chicken after what kind of cheese? After what kind of cheese? Hard cheese. Which means if you read the Rambam this way, you would say, if it's soft cheese, Rambam agrees, just rinse your mouth out, wash your hands, no problem. Because this whole view he's introducing is only the hard cheese. However, let's read the text again, and I'm going to point out an anomaly in the text, which makes it different. The opening line is, those are stringent, even meat after cheese. Doesn't qualify what kind of cheese. which means those are astringent after any cheese. But we are stringent only in hard cheese, which means that Rama is first introducing an opinion which says that all cheese requires the full wait period. But we are stringent only in hard cheese. Right? Which means now there is a view that after cheese, you also need to wait an extended period of time. What view is that? From all the Gemaras that I shared with you, I didn't show you all of them, but everything I told you, there is no view like that. Right? The view was at best after cheese, rinse your mouth out. So who's this yesh machmir? Who is the stringency? So here they put the different sources, and this whole machlek is exactly who is this yesh machmir and who is the stringency that we're referring to wait after cheese, and how long? He doesn't say either. When it comes to the hard cheese, he says we are stringent when it comes to hard cheese to treat it the same way you would treat meat, which for us would mean 6 hours. Okay, so after hard cheese, wait 6 hours. Great. What qualifies as hard cheese? Also a great question. We'll get to that to Chazar Lamaisa, which Meir and Pesach here, that's the discussion we're going to have. That's the discussion we're having here. What exactly qualifies as hard cheese to make us wait 6 hours afterwards? And we'll get to that again when we do our Chazar Lamaisa. But now, what's this opinion where Ramah says to be stringent if it's not limited to hard cheese, it's all cheeses? So the Gra, the Vilna Gaon, says it's referring to the following. And this is the third opinion, which we haven't had yet. Namely, the Zohar. The Zohar says that a person, the expression in Hebrew is, or in Aramaic, I should say it like this, because the expression is important because the translation changes how you understand it. It says you shouldn't eat either milk and meat, b'shaita chada, in one unit of time. That's the best way to translate shaita. Literally means hour, but it's not really hour. It's unit of time. And not in one meal. Okay, so one meal, I guess you shouldn't eat them in the same meal. You have to bench in between, okay. And the Zohar does not differentiate between milk or meat. It says don't have these two types in one unit of time and in one meal. So what does it mean in one unit of time? If you take the word shaita literally, it means an hour.
So an hour and a minute. So it'd be the next,
literally an hour, exactly. So then the Zohar at the bare minimum is saying, wait an hour between meat and cheese, and wait an hour between cheese and meat.
Yeah.
So if you took Zohar at face value, at least in this reading, you would be like a hybrid between the two opinions in the Gemara. One opinion in the Gemara that said, as long as you're in a new meal, you're fine. Other opinion in understanding the Gemara was, wait the meal time, which is 6 hours, and the Zohar is saying, only wait an hour. So if you took the Zohar at face value, at least at this reading, it would mean wait 1 hour after meat and 1 hour after cheese. Right? Now, conversely, you can say that the Zohar is saying, and this is the dominant reading of the Zohar is saying, don't have milk and meat in a unit of time, each in their own level. In meat, 6 hours, and in cheese, at least that unit of time, which is an hour. And that's where it comes from that we wait an hour after cheese, from the Zohar, which isn't explicitly even mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. It's a funny thing. It's only alluded to in the Ramah, perhaps, when the Ramah says, are those that are stringent after cheese? Who is those that are stringent? Okay, so if he's referring to the Zohar, then it means that there's a view to wait an hour after cheese, right? It's really a chumrah that we take on. So it's not as if, for example, when it comes to those who are lenient and not waiting the 6 hours after meat, many of the commentators are going to say, Roy Ligar, it's worthy of admonishing those who ignore the importance of waiting 6 hours after meat and just rinse their mouth out because they found one opinion that are Rabbeinu Tam, which says you can rinse your mouth out. It's worthy of yelling at them. This is what many of the commentaries say. You're not going to find that the other way, where it's worthy of stopping people from rinsing their mouth out after cheese.
Right.
You're not going to find that because it's not explicit anywhere in the Shulchan Aruch or the Ramah. It's in the Zohar, which is Chassidim. We're following the Zohar, but it's alluded to maybe in the Shulchan Aruch. Right? Okay. So that, as far as the waiting between milk and meat goes, and vice versa. Gimel is a whole other subject, which again comes down to a bunch of different Gemaras that seem to contradict each other, and the question of how you resolve them. But essentially, the question is, and this is going to be a Machlekes Ramah and Mechaber, which is food cooked with dairy, or food cooked with meat, but not the meat or dairy themselves. Do they have the same? Do they have the same
dairy equipment?
Not dairy
No,
equipment.
it's higher. It's higher than
It's higher than dairy equipment. We'll get to dairy equipment also. Does dairy equipment have the same?
Again, what are you specifying? I didn't understand.
I don't know. Let's just say.
That sounds good.
Sorry.
I'm getting confused. Yeah, I'm curious.
What is
a cholent, but you're not having any of the meat. You're not eating any of the actual physical meat. So though nothing getting stuck in your teeth, maybe you don't necessarily have the 6 hour flavor in your mouth for 6 hours. So it doesn't have the same stringency as the meat itself. And the
Or you're
same
saying
thing
like a chicken soup where you took out the piece of chicken.
exactly. It's
So it's just soup
it's a
left.
meat
It's just-
dish
it's just
without
broth.
the actual meat.
Just broth. But
It's the broth.
It's
It's,
cooked
right.
with
It's the
chicken
beans
soup.
and the barley and the potatoes and the cholent without
But it's
actually
like
the meat.
chicken soup's
Not
an
chicken
example.
soup. Chicken soup is chicken.
But the same thing would be there too.
Yeah.
Do we-
You're talking about something that doesn't have any meat in it.
Yeah,
no,
chicken
no,
soup.
no. A flake cholent,
Yeah.
but you didn't eat the meat.
Oh,
You're having a potato from Poland.
You're
I
having-
sure
potato.
didn't understand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the potato, the
Ate
barley,
potatoes and the barley, and you put the meat aside.
but you didn't eat the meat.
You didn't eat the meat.
So if the 6 hours, for example, is because something's stuck in your teeth, nothing's getting stuck in your teeth here.
No.
Even the flavor for 6 hours,
Even your digestive tract, nothing's getting
even
digested.
digested is not going to be the same.
Right.
So do we treat dishes that have been cooked with milk and meat as if you ate the milk and meat, cause you to wait that time afterwards? That's going to be discussed as well in Sif Gimel, and it's going to be Machlekes Ramah and Machaber as you'll learn. Of course, as you already know, we're going to be stringent and wait the full 6 hours and the full 1 hour. And the question is also going to come up with respect to that which was made in either milchik or fleishik pots, and if they were going to be much more lenient.
No, that's super. Yeah.
They were going to be much
Yeah.
more lenient. That's also going to be
That's
discussed
wonderful.
in Gimel,
We consider equipment. We just don't eat it with the other type, and you can eat it right after.
as we're going to see. Yes, it's going to be in the Ramah on Gimel. Okay, Dalid is going to go back to Peches, which is what you were talking about, Noah, where you cannot leave on the table when you're going from one to the other. So in the case of going one to the other would be cheese to meat, following the basic letter of the law, where you don't have to wait that 1 hour, because as I just explained, that's an introduction from the Zohar, which isn't directly mentioned in the Gemara at all. So if you're going to go from cheese to meat, let's say on Shavuos, and you don't have to wait that full hour because you're not a Zohar guy, you're just a direct Shulchan Aruch guy, and so you're rinsing your mouth out, washing your hands, and benching, but you still have to make sure that you're removing everything off the table.
And cheese tablecloth.
Then may have cheese in it, and maybe the tablecloth as we'll see, and as well, it's going to talk about the halacha of having specifically actually knives, separate knives. We are much more machmer. We have separate dishes and separate forks,
towels. We need
separate cups.
Separate towels. I've seen either like also.
Okay, that actually might be a thing because if you're using the towel to wipe your mouth, that might actually be a thing because it's residue. But when it comes to the knife, it's most important because the knife absorbs as you're pressing down, which is a halacha that's going to come up
Doesn't need heat. Pressure
later.
in place of heat.
This is a halacha that's going to come up much later. We're going to be introduced to a little bit here. This idea, duchke sakina, the pressure of the knife itself causes a certain level of absorption, or if not absorption, as we're going to learn, it causes residue to remain there even after you wash it. And if you want to know the proof of it, wash your knife and then turn your sink on a tiny little drop, and then let it stream on top of your knife. Let it stream down your knife, but not in a very strong flow, a very soft, steady flow, and you'll see the water will split around some little something that's stuck on your knife, even though you thought your knife was clean. Because it's very difficult to get rid of all the residue off. And as we're going to learn, the way to kosherize it is by stabbing in the ground 10 times.
Right.
No way.
Yeah.
And that way you're pulling off any residue that might be there.
Yeah.
So we're going to learn about that. Sorry?
Like you could boiling it or something.
So it doesn't work for a knife because the way it absorbed wasn't through, you have to get rid of it in the same way it absorbed, right? It didn't get absorbed because something was boiled in it. It got absorbed because of pressure. So you have to put the pressure to remove it, unless you have to stab it in the ground 10 times. Not in the same spot, but like in 10 different spots. It's an easy kosherizing, but it's doable. Yeah, I've done it. Not a big deal.
In the summer, it's very easy in the summer.
Yeah.
In the winter, not so much.
Not a big deal. So, and it's just what's interesting though at the end of the Ramah, I want to point this out.
Maybe you could put it in a plant pot then.
If you're in 10 different spots, then
No,
yeah.
but then it's soft. That's softer.
Not necessarily.
And
Not necessarily.
I thought you need the
Different soft.
pressure.
Necessarily. If you have like if you have like a indoor, like the plant I have in my house, that's like a,
Mhm.
it has hard earth under there. It's like an indoor, what do they call it? Indoor pot plant.
Yeah.
They're like all season, and the earth can be very hard there. Anyway, so then I was going to conclude with something that I find very interesting. That even though I haven't seen this, maybe when it comes to Chazar Lamaisa, we'll see, but I haven't seen it applied beyond what the Ramah says. But I think it's interesting, and I'm going to tell you where I think it might apply. So the Ramah writes, as we're going to learn, that a person has to have 2 separate knives for their milk and meat. Okay, again, we're much more stringent, and we have separate dishes and separate everything. Cups, we're going to see there might actually be a good reason because you leave residue of what you were eating on your cup, and if someone shares it, you have an issue. She writes like this, that you should have separate knives, and you should have an indication that tells you which knife is which. Right? Okay. Now, the coloring thing wasn't a thing back then. So you have to make a mark on one of the knives. So it says like this. The custom is to mark the milk one, the dairy one, and don't change the custom. Which means you don't do in your house marking the meat one, while everybody else is marking the dairy one. Why?
Because then you get confused.
Oh, which means that the Shulchan Aruch is taking into consideration social convention. If social convention is such that the way we indicate what's dairy is by putting a mark on that knife, then if I'm going to my friend's house and I see a mark on the knife, I'm going to assume it's dairy. So don't be a smart aleck and change it. And no, Mom, in my house, the mark is on the meat one, right? This social convention, and we share, we host each other, we come to those houses, so we have to have a universal sign. So I'm gonna wait for Chazar Lamaisa to confirm
I got
this.
angry at someone who had a blue meat knife. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, what are you
So
doing?
I want to wait for Chazar Lamaisa to confirm this, but it would seem reasonable to me based on this that it's almost a halachic requirement, at least to some degree, that your dairy be blue and your meat be red. Because otherwise, someone comes into my house and he starts cutting bread with a blue knife, assuming it's a billick knife, and I go, I cut my meat with that, right? Which is the whole purpose of this halacha, that you shouldn't have knife you cut meat with and then cut your bread with and eat a slice of cheese with it. Right? So the social convention actually is factored into the Ramah's thinking of how the person should practice.
I saw blue knife in someone's place drawer, and I was like, is this a mistake? They're like, no, it's my meat knife. I was like, throw this in the garbage. I'm like, what are you doing?
So you have very strong grounds to stand on. So again, I'm going to wait for the Chazar Lamaisa a bit, because I imagine it's going to come up in that discussion. But I thought it very interesting. He incorporates into halacha social convention. So that way there's uniformity, so we can all,
By the way, there's also the parrot knife, which is white.
Yeah.
White or green.
Yeah.
White or green, right?
So I think at this point, since we learned we learned enough that I can share with you the following. I mean, I learned smicha the first time, so my chavrusa and I came to the following conclusion: that when it comes to kosher, we're basically much more stringent than we need to be, because we can be. And when it comes to Shabbos, unbeknownst to ourselves, we're basically in violation of Shabbos every Shabbos. Between the laws of muktzah and boder and hachana, there's just like it's so many. The Alter Rebbe actually acknowledges this in Tanya and talks about why it's important to learn the laws of Shabbos, because people are constantly violating it just because they don't know, right? So here's an example of that. You're going to see the limitation of the Ramah having separate dishes is going to be knife. That's it.
Right.
We have separate dishes for everything. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's a good thing. And to take it even further, as we learned all these times, you have like these questions of hefsem meruba, you have a great loss, you're making a bar mitzvah, and you don't have, okay, no problem, go ahead. None of us today would do that.
No.
You call the caterer, and he's going to sell that out to whoever, not lose anything, and he'll bring a new meal in a half an hour. That's fully, completely kosher. So
new dishes
whatever.
In
cases before, we had like, mixed up doubts, and we weren't, let's say, it's a lot of chanan, a liquid fell in, and
a meal
cases in kufay.
Meal is not possible. Dishes, yeah. You can't.
Your caterer can get you a new meal in a half an hour.
For 500 people?
An hour, hour and a half. In many cases, certainly. I don't know how many 500 people. How many brises have 500 people? Even a big bris is 300 people. Yeah. Or
no, you're right. A bris 200 people. Let's say. Yeah.
Let's go back. The bar mitzvah.
Everything gets
hold on.
The
bar mitzvah and the bris that the Shulchan Aruch was talking about. How many people do you think were the bar mitzvah and the bris that the Shulchan Aruch was talking about? How many people do you think were at the bris?
50.
Maybe. That would be a big bris. And that's the hefsem meruba. How long do you take for your caterer to put up a meal for an hour for 50 people? They probably have half the meal already done, waiting for the next customer to come in. We're so much more opulent in our availability of what we can do, because we don't have all these hefsem meruba. We end up being a lot more strict. Dishes is an example. We can afford to have 2 dishes, no big deal.
Right.
Back in the old day, afford 2 dishes, are you out of your mind? You can't afford 2 dishes.
Yeah.
We did that. You have descriptions of people operating their Pesach. On Erev Pesach in the morning, they kosherized everything and cooked everything from new. On Erev Pesach, including the matzah. Because they didn't have extra ovens and dishes lying around. It didn't exist. So we are much more stringent, and thank God, on kosher than probably people ever were. Right. When it comes to Shabbos, not so much. Okay, so that's Peiches and Peites. It's an easier learning this week. So if we didn't finish...
I just have a question on that.
Yeah.
why are we so machmir on basar b'chalab? I know that there's an Indian in the Zohar that says that it's a spiritual thing, kind of like it's a chuk, kind of like when you put your hands together, like you cross your fingers together. There's no, but the Chachamim have made it such a serious concept, right? But 1,000 years ago, I don't know, they didn't. I don't think they practiced the same kind of Yiddishkeit, like in practice,
We have to be careful when we speak that way, but to know exactly what we're talking about. But I'm making the argument the other way around. Our sages were opening up leniencies because people couldn't afford to be stringent.
No, but today we're much more stringent than
Because
they.
can afford it.
Is that really what it comes down to?
Basically. Now, the reason to be stringent when it comes to kosher, to your point, is it's not just a Zohar concept. It's even brought in Ramban and others, Bachai and others, that many not just Zoharic Kabbalistic sources.
It's like a spiritual clash.
One second. Not just, I'm saying, not just in the mystical side of Torah, even in the halachic side of Torah, we have a lot about, and Nevi spoke about this when he started Mitzvah Kashrus. One of the 10 mitzvah campaigns is kosher. Right. How it's one of the few prohibitions that you ingest. And because part of you, part of who you are. So engaging in an act that's prohibited doesn't have the same impact as consuming that which is prohibited. And therefore, there's strong reason, even on the most halachic level, to be stringent when it comes to kosher, because you're ingesting that which is prohibited.
In other words, you are what you eat.
Right. One of the there is this view that kosher is not a chayk. Well, kosher is a broad term. Do you mean basar b'chalav? Do you mean
forbidden mixtures?
Forbidden mixtures, forbidden foods. There's different. Kosher is a very broad term used for lots of things, but they're different prohibitions, right? There's a prohibition of eating blood. There's a prohibition of eating non-slaughtered animals. There's a prohibition of eating pig, milks and meat. There's different things. But one of the opinions which say basar b'chalav is pretty much universally a chayk, but the opinions which say that kosher animals is not a chayk, they make the case that you adopt the characteristics of the food you eat, and the Torah tells us to eat docile, calm, and compassionate animals, and animals that are dodos, that are predatory animals. Are the non-kosher animals, so that we don't absorb that negative character trait. There are those who make that case. It's not for basar b'chalav, but it is for that.
Right.
Just to make that point. So much so that there are some families, children of Shalah, who don't eat turkey. Why don't they eat turkey, even though it's kosher? Because the Shalah says he once found a turkey being dodos, eating another animal. And he said, if turkey has such a negative character trait, I don't want people eating it.
Yeah, but chickens also do that. If you don't feed a chicken for like a few days and there's a corpse there, he's eating it and he's cleaning that corpse like you won't recognize it.
That's true of humans too. Extraneous circumstances is something else. No, seriously, humans will result to all kinds of things if they're truly starving.
Right.
But in normal circumstances, they're not predatory animals. But the Shalah saw turkey being predatory, so he decided he wanted to ban it. And many families, I know many of them, until today, do not eat turkey. For that reason. Anyway, okay. Have a wonderful day, Yidden. Good vach. Haslachat in learning, and looking forward to Chazar L'Maisa. I don't think we'll have to do 2 this time. It's much shorter, and it's not so complicated. But there are some very practical stuff that will come out of this, God willing. Okay, wonderful day, everybody. Good vach.
Yeah, the Ramon in what's it called? Choice doesn't bring. Doesn't mention anything about waiting between the.
Because here also doesn't say to wait. Doesn't say to wait there either. And Gvina Kasha. Question is, what exactly is Gvina Kasha? So we'll get to that, God willing, on Wednesday.